Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love. I'm your host, Tomas Garza, and thank you so much for joining me here today. And for all of you that have tuned in recently, in the last week, we've had a lot of people joining us here on the live stream for the first time. So a couple of just quick points if you're joining us new again, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. This is a daily live stream that focuses on the teachings of A Course in Miracles, the spiritual text. And you may be intimately familiar with this material, and maybe you're seeing this for the first time, or you're studying it, practicing it for the first time. You may have heard about it. What we're doing here in the live is I am taking all of us through the workbook for students, which is one of three main components to the course. There is a text, which is a narrative text that presents some explanations on the thought system. It's all universal spirituality, by the way. Then there is a manual for teachers, which is kind of like a frequently asked questions session. It's an FAQ that's usually at the back of the combined edition. Then in between is something called the Workbook for Students. Now, you may or may not be attracted to the word workbook. I have worked with a lot of people that are instantly turned off by the idea of workbook because maybe they just finished school or they never liked school in the first place. So in their minds, there is this image of compulsion. There's this feeling that you must do the workbook lessons. Well, all right, maybe that is something that you can relate to. Maybe it's not. What the workbook actually is it is a series of ideas. There are 365 of these. So that is absolutely on purpose by design so that one could go through one idea a day for 365 days. Boom, in a year, you are through the workbook. Does that mean you're through? No. No, it's just the beginning. But what the idea is that each day there is an idea in bold. It's a saying, a statement. They're all really very short. And then the workbook gives us an explanation of what that idea means according to the thought system of the course. And one then practices that idea according to the suggestions in the workbook itself, honestly, to the best of your ability. Yeah, it's something that might be easy for you to remember to do, and it might be extremely difficult for you to remember to do. And this is, in fact, the third time that I personally have gone through the workbook. I can tell you from my own experience that my understanding has deepened every time. The first time I went through this was 2013 when I started working with A Course in Miracles. That's actually the year where I bought the copy that I still have. I have it in front of me right now, and I'll be reading from it a little bit today, as I do on every live stream. And yeah, that's the first time I did it. And now my understanding is totally different. If you've done this before, you can attest to that. It's kind of like reading a novel for the third time, something that you really enjoyed. You pick up different pieces. Why? Because you're a different person the third time through than you were the first. Now, how am I different? Well, I'm calmer. I'm happier. I'm much more loving, much more forgiving, and much more in tune with divine flow. Does that help? This is what is available to all of us. Now, is this the right teaching for you? Maybe, maybe not. Here's something that's worth bearing in mind is this is a self-study course by design. And this is what it says. It is a self-study curriculum. So you go at your own pace. You learn at your own pace. This is beautiful because no one is forcing us to do this. No one is coercing us. So As we go through the workbook for students, we literally go at our own pace. That means if you feel that you need more practice with a given idea, or you don't quite grasp it, it doesn't quite sit perfectly well where you'd like it to, then you can work on it for several days if you want to. I've done this. I've repeated a lesson 3 or 4 times for both reasons. One, because I felt like I wasn't quite grasping it and needed to work on it. And then secondly, another reason was I liked it, one of them. I've done that a couple of times where I just wanted to sit with an idea again because it resonated so powerfully for me right then in the moment. So wherever you find yourself here, these are universal spirituality. So another thing that I do want to point out is that it doesn't make any difference what your religious or spiritual background is, and it does not matter what you're currently practicing, if anything. Right? My guess is that if you're watching this live stream here on this network, that you have some form of spiritual practice. Now, a course is not saying you must just do this only. So drop whatever else you're doing and follow this only. You don't have to do that. What a lot of people find is that this material, being self-study, augments their current path. In other words, it lends a different understanding and support to their current spiritual practice, which is really wonderful. So, really, there are no limitations on this at all. And you may do exactly as you wish with it. Now, if you're following along in the workbook, I do recommend that you follow the instructions in the workbook themselves because, well, this is material that's been dictated by Jesus. And, well, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. And it's tempting for people to want to skip ahead and think, I resonate more with lesson 249 than 66. So I'm just going to skip ahead, right? Yeah, we don't recommend that you do that because what's going on here is you'll notice that this is systematic and it's a thought system. One idea builds on the next idea, which builds on the next idea, so on and so forth. And today is no different at all. We're on lesson 66 today, and there's a lot of real juicy, impactful material here. This is beautiful. This is a beautiful lesson. So I'm happy to be here talking about this from my own point of view, from my own experience today. So hopefully what I'll have to say will resonate with you on a very deep level. I hope so. I always hope that. My happiness and my function are one. Okay, that's lesson 66. My happiness and my function are one. If you're just joining us, our function is forgiveness. You'll notice that forgiveness is a huge theme in A Course in Miracles. It is said in this thought system that forgiveness is our function here in the world. We're the light of the world, and our function is to forgive. What exactly does that mean? Well, we can take a lot of time on that. And this is usually just about a 20 to 25-minute live stream. So this material is worth hours of discussion and practice. But we can sum it up really, really briefly that forgiveness is overlooking error. What error? The error of seeing ourselves as separate, as seeing ourselves as what we call individuals, separate individuals running around, having our own experience, sometimes loving each other, sometimes hating each other, competing with each other, sometimes in certain parts of the world and certain economic systems more so than others. And all of that, all of the gradation of experience, what is it? It's an error. Why? We're not separate. There is no separation of any kind. So with that in mind, our happiness and our function are one. The form of this may look different because what makes one person happy in the world does not necessarily make someone else happy in the world. In the world, there's all kinds of differences and gradations and Well, separation. Some people love to watch TV. Others don't own a TV and never want to buy one. Some people love to exercise. Other people hate to exercise. Right? Some people love discrete mathematics. Some people don't know what it is and don't want to find out. Right? So there are all kinds of apparent differences in the world. The form looks different, but the function and then the meaning of everything is actually at its core, deep down, and we're talking absolute truth here, the same. Right? Happiness and our function are one. So what the workbook talks about today is a an acceptance of this, a willingness to sit with this idea and repeat it as often as we need to, practice it as often as we need to. Because really, what this is about accepting the premise that God gives only happiness. Okay. Perfect love can only extend perfect love. Think about it. God gives only happiness. And we would do well to accept this. I mean, really, think about it. Would perfect love give you a past due mortgage statement necessarily? Would perfect love give you biting flies and mosquitoes, a pandemic, disease, frustration, suffering? Would perfect love do that? And if you answer, well, no, then yeah, that's right. Perfect love can only extend itself. So what we've done in the world is we've chosen the opposite, fear, the ego. In other words, a separate sense of self apparently running around competing with everyone else in the world. What does that bring us? Well, what has it brought you? Has it brought you lasting happiness? I mean, constant, lasting happiness. What this lesson today and what all spiritual practice all the time is asking us for is complete honesty and transparency with yourself. Honesty with yourself. I mean, yes, we should be honest with other people, of course, tactfully in certain situations, right? You know how that looks, how that feels, right? We're all adults here. So we know when we're spreading fear rather than love. We just instinctively know that, don't we? Yet we continue to choose fear again and again. Why? We're habitually conditioned to do it in the world by people, by society, by the news media, everything. Yeah. So all of spiritual practice is an exercise in being willing to drop all of the external chatter and go within where the real answers are. That's where the real answers are. Why? Because we have the ability right now to decide between love or fear. That's the choice, by the way. It may look like we're choosing from millions of different options, like going through the shelves at a grocery store, but it's really not that way. Either something leads to happiness or unhappiness. It really is one or the other. And well, we've habitually chosen the other: unhappiness, separation, guilt, fear, a sense of lack. Who hasn't felt these things in life, right? Yeah. And sometimes we may feel the opposite. We may feel joyful, connected, loving, limitless, but then it alternates. As long as we continue to identify with the ego, we'll experience this night and day, black and white alternation between beautiful thoughts and horrible thoughts. And sometimes we might have several different horrible separation thoughts in a row, yeah, for long periods of time, years, maybe even decades. We call that depression, yeah. Pronounced anxiety, depression, sadness, yeah. And, it seems like it's very difficult to get out of that. But Spirituality is really quite simple. It requires that we simply choose love. And that's it. And the results of that are really a game changer. They really are. A couple of points here from lesson 66 is that the ego is always trying, it's a part of our minds that's always trying to convince us that we're separate. And it attacks the whole and loving part of our minds, which is really who we are, is love. And we're not even the conscious thinking mind ultimately. But the ego wants to do battle, and love simply doesn't respond. If someone wants to fight you and you don't respond, then there's no war going on. This means that we have, each of us, the ability to drop the war right now, drop the distraction, let go of the drama. Would you like to do that? Would you like to let go of all of the drama and negativity in your life? Well, you can. You can choose to do that right now. We try to, in the world, endlessly define happiness, what happiness is. And to one person, it's going for a hike in the desert. To another person, it's staying at home and sleeping in all day, maybe watching Netflix. But it's different things for different people. So we try in the world to define it, and we put labels on things, don't we? And we have categories and subcategories and different degrees of happiness. Something makes me kind of happy, and this makes me really happy, maybe really joyful. This activity, not at all. And we label and we continue to build ultimately a psychological wall. There's no wall there, but as an image to illustrate this, we just wall ourselves off from the truth with all of our endless and frankly needless complications. So spiritual practice, the workbook for students, meditation, prayer, whatever it looks like for you, is taking that wall down, removing it a piece at a time so that we can see and have the experience of who we really are, which has nothing to do with any of the barriers that we try to put in place. So important to recognize here in summing this up, God gives only happiness. He's not capable of giving anything else. God has no ego to be offended. Perfect love is oneness. So there's no separate sense of self to offend, which means if you have always felt that this idea of God as the meting out of punishment is not resonant and doesn't sit well with you, then, well, yeah, that's my experience as well. I was that kid in Sunday school who kept questioning why perfect love would condemn. Never got a satisfactory answer on that one, by the way. However, we do get a satisfactory answer here in A Course in Miracles, which may serve for you as confirmation of something that you've always believed. Now, I have had this beautiful experience multiple times with the Course. So I just invite all of us to be really, really honest with ourselves today. And has the ego brought you lasting happiness? Lasting as in constant, 100%, without a doubt, certainty, happiness. Might bring you temporary happiness, but I mean, has it brought you lasting? Have you been thrilled and happy and joyous and felt like you were one with God, with the power of God, God's will and your will being the same? Have you felt like that at all times in this lifetime? And I mean every moment. I don't know of anyone that can honestly answer yes to that. It's very easy and very tempting. And to us, it almost seems natural to identify with the ego until we realize that there's something else there. And what is really natural is identifying with love. Why? It's who we are. So again, today's lesson, my happiness and my function, that being forgiveness, are one. All righty. So let's hop on here and see who's joining me here on the live stream. Robert, hello, good evening. Looks like we've got some people watching here with me. So if you're catching this on the replay here, definitely please feel welcome to leave me questions here in the comments. I do go back and I look at these throughout the day, so feel welcome to leave those. And if you have specific questions about A Course in Miracles or about forgiveness, some of the topics that we're talking about have different meanings in this thought system than they do in common parlance, including forgiveness, which is commonly misunderstood in the world. So any questions, I am here to help with those, and feel welcome to leave them here in the comments. And again, if you're just joining us for the first time, this is a daily live stream. So I will be back here again tomorrow. Check the show guide on Enlightened World Network's Facebook page for the daily show times. Actually, that goes for not just this show, but all of the programming. And I thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.